Hey everyone. Get cozy, settle into a comfy position, and let these calming tales whisk you away to a peaceful night's sleep. Drop a comment below on what time and from where you are watching this video and share your own late-night ritual that helps you drift off. Rain lashed against the windshield, the wipers struggling to keep up with the deluge. Clara gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles pale against the worn leather. The narrow mountain road twisted ahead, barely visible through the storm. Her old station wagon groaned as it climbed, tires slipping on the slick gravel. She hadn't seen a road sign in miles, and the GPS had given up an hour ago, its screen frozen on a blinking no signal. Almost there, she muttered, more to herself than to the empty passenger seat. The words felt hollow, but they kept her grounded. She'd been driving for hours, fleeing the chaos of the city, her job, her ex, the suffocating weight of expectations. The cabin was her last hope, a place to disappear, to breathe. Her aunt had left it to her in the will, a ramshackle retreat tucked deep in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Clara had never visited, but the grainy photos in the estate papers promised solitude, a wood stove and a view of endless pines. That was enough. Lightning cracked, illuminating a wooden sign half buried in ferns, Hollow Creek, 1 mile. Clara exhaled, her shoulders loosening. The road dipped, and the forest closed in, branches scraping the car like eager fingers. She slowed as a clearing emerged, and there it was, the cabin. Smaller than she'd imagined, its cedar siding weathered to a soft gray, it crouched beneath a sagging porch. A single window glowed faintly, though she hadn't expected anyone to be there. She parked, grabbed her duffel, and sprinted through the rain. The porch creaked under her boots, and the front door, swollen from the damp, took a hard shove to open. Inside, the air smelled of pine and old books. A lantern flickered on a rough-hewn table, casting shadows across a cozy room. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, its hearth cold but stacked with logs. A quilted couch sagged in the corner, and a narrow staircase led to a loft above. "Hello?" Clara called, her voice swallowed by the patter of rain. No answer. She frowned at the lantern. Had the estate lawyer left it on? Shaking off the unease, she dropped her bag and knelt by the fireplace. Her hands trembled as she arranged kindling, the chill seeping through her damp sweater. The match flared, and soon flames licked the logs, their warmth spreading like a promise. She sank onto the couch, the fire's glow softening the room's edges. Outside the storm raged, but in here it felt safe. Almost too safe, like the cabin was waiting for her. She pulled a folded letter from her pocket, the one her aunt had written years ago, tucked in with the deed. "This place holds more than you think, Clara. Listen to it." Cryptic like Aunt Mara always was. Clara tucked the letter away, too tired to puzzle it out. A thud upstairs made her freeze. The lantern flickered, though no draft stirred the air. She stood, heart pounding, and grabbed the poker from the hearth. "Who's there?" she called, her voice sharper now. The rain answered, relentless. Another thud, softer, like a footstep. She glanced at the door, then the stairs. She hadn't come this far to run. Clara's boots echoed on the wooden steps, each creak amplified by the storm's rhythm. The poker felt heavy in her hand, its iron cold against her palm. The loft was a low-ceiling space, barely lit by the lantern's glow filtering up from below. A single bed sat against one wall, its quilt neatly tucked. A small desk held a dusty journal and a brass key, its edges worn smooth. No one was there. She lowered the poker, exhaling. Just the house settling, she told herself, but her pulse didn't slow. The thud had been real, deliberate. She crossed to the window, rain streaking the glass in wild patterns. Beyond, the forest was a blur of shadow and mist. She turned back to the desk, her eyes catching on the journal. Its leather cover was cracked, the pages yellowed. She hesitated, then opened it. The handwriting was Aunt Mara's, slanted, precise. October 12, 1998. "The rain never stops here, not really. It's the mountain's voice telling its secrets. I heard her again last night in the walls." Clara's brow furrowed. Her aunt had always been eccentric, spinning tales of spirits and signs, but this felt different. She flipped forward. November 3, 2001. "She showed me the hollow today. It's real. The key fits." The entries stopped there, the remaining pages blank. Clara picked up the key, its weight surprising. It didn't look like it fit the cabin's doors. She tucked it into her pocket and descended, the journal under her arm. The fire had grown, its warmth now almost oppressive. She set the journal on the table and rummaged through her duffel for a granola bar, her stomach growling. As she ate, the words echoed, "The key fits." Fits what? A knock at the door jolted her. 3 sharp raps, deliberate. She froze, the granola bar halfway to her mouth. Who could be out here in this storm miles from anywhere? She gripped the poker again and approached the door, peering through the small window. A figure stood on the porch, rain-soaked, their hood obscuring their face. "Who is it?" Clara called, her voice steady despite the knot in her chest. "Name's Elias," came a low, gravelly voice. "I'm your neighbor down the ridge. Saw your light. Thought I'd check in." Neighbor? The estate papers hadn't mentioned anyone nearby. She hesitated, then unlatched the door, keeping the poker in hand. The man was older, maybe 60, with a gray beard and eyes that glinted in the lantern light. His raincoat dripped onto the porch. "Didn't mean to startle you," he said, glancing at the poker. "Storm's a bad one. Just making sure you're settled." Clara relaxed slightly but kept her grip tight. "I'm fine. Just got here." He nodded, his gaze flicking to the journal on the table. "Mara's place, huh?" She was particular. "You her kin?" "Niece," Clara said. "You knew her?" "Enough to know this cabin's got stories." He paused as if weighing his words. "Keep that fire going. Gets cold up here." He tipped his hood and stepped back into the rain, vanishing into the dark. Clara locked the door, her mind racing. Stories? She looked at the journal, then the key in her pocket. The storm howled, and the cabin seemed to hum in response, as if it had been waiting for her to ask. Morning brought no relief. The rain had softened to a drizzle, but the sky remained a bruised gray, the forest shrouded in fog. Clara sipped coffee from a chipped mug she'd found in the kitchen, the journal open before her. She'd read more entries last night, each one stranger than the last. Mara wrote of a hollow in the mountain, a place where the rain sang and the air felt alive. She mentioned a door hidden that the key would open. Clara traced the key's outline in her pocket, its edges pressing into her thigh. She needed answers. Bundling into her raincoat, she stepped outside, the air sharp with pine and damp earth. The clearing was small, hemmed by towering trees, their branches heavy with moisture. She circled the cabin, looking for anything that might be a door, a cellar, a shed, anything. Nothing. Just mud and roots. Elias's visit nagged at her. He'd known Mara, known the cabin. She scanned the ridge, spotting a faint trail winding downhill. If he was her neighbor, maybe he knew more. She grabbed the key and journal, locked the cabin, and started down the path. The forest was quiet, save for the drip of rain and the occasional bird call. The trail was overgrown, roots snaking across it like veins. After 20 minutes, she reached a small cabin, its tin roof rusted but intact. Smoke curled from the chimney. She knocked, and Elias opened the door, his expression unreadable. "Didn't expect you so soon," he said, stepping aside. "Coffee?" She declined, holding up the journal. Mara wrote about a hollow. A door. This key. "You know anything about it?" Elias's eyes narrowed, but he gestured to a chair by the fire. His cabin was sparse. Wooden floors, a single bookshelf, a rifle mounted above the hearth. Mara was curious, he said, sitting across from her. "Always poking into things best left alone. That hollow she wrote about? It's real, but it ain't kind." Clara leaned forward. "Where is it?" He sighed, rubbing his beard. "Down by the creek, past the old oak. There's a rock face, looks solid." "Ain't solid. But I'm telling you, leave it be." Mara didn't, and it changed her. Changed her how? Clara's voice was sharp, but her hands shook. Elias stared into the fire. She stopped coming down the ridge. Kept to herself, talking, to things that weren't there. Said the hollow showed her truths she couldn't unsee. Clara's throat tightened. Mara had died alone, her heart giving out in this very cabin. The official report called it natural causes, but Clara had always wondered. She stood, clutching the journal. "I need to see it." Elias shook his head but didn't stop her. "Follow the creek. You'll know it when you see it. But don't say I didn't warn you." The creek was a silver thread through the forest, its banks slick with mud. Clara followed it, the journal tucked inside her coat. The old oak Elias mentioned loomed ahead, its gnarled branches clawing at the sky. Beyond it, the creek bent, and a rock face rose from the earth, moss-covered and imposing. She scanned it, her breath catching as she spotted a faint seam, barely visible, shaped like a door. She pulled the key from her pocket, its brass glinting dully. The seam had no keyhole, no handle, just a smooth surface. She pressed her hand against it, expecting cold stone. Instead, it was warm, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. She stepped back, heart racing. The journal's words echoed, "The key fits." She traced the seam, her fingers catching on a small indentation, barely noticeable. The key slid in perfectly, and with a soft click, the rock shifted, revealing a narrow passage. Dank air wafted out, smelling of earth and something sweeter like honeysuckle. Clara hesitated, then stepped inside, the journal clutched to her chest. The passage sloped downward, the walls damp and studded with quartz that caught her flashlight's beam. The air grew warmer, the rain's patter fading. After a few minutes, the passage opened into a cavern, its ceiling lost in shadow. A pool of water sat at the center, its surface still as glass, reflecting bioluminescent fungi that clung to the walls. The air hummed, not with sound but with feeling, grief, joy, longing, all at once. Clara knelt by the pool, her reflection staring back. It wasn't just her face. Shadows moved beneath the water, faces she didn't recognize, their eyes wide and pleading. She gasped, dropping the journal. It fell open to a page she hadn't read. The hollow shows you what you need, not what you want. Be careful what you ask. She reached for the water, drawn to its clarity. Her fingers brushed the surface and the world tilted. Images flooded her. Her mother's funeral, her ex's betrayal, her own sleepless nights at a desk she hated. But there were older memories too. Mara teaching her to braid wildflowers, laughing under a summer sky. Tears welled as the hollow stripped her bare, showing her every choice, every regret. "Who are you?" she whispered, her voice echoing. The faces in the water shifted, and one became clear. Mara, her eyes kind but sad. "Listen," she seemed to say. Clara's chest ached. She wanted to stay to understand, but the air grew heavy, pressing her down. She stumbled back, grabbing the journal, and ran for the passage. Clara burst from the passage, the rock ceiling behind her with a low groan. The rain had stopped, the forest eerily still. She clutched the journal, her hands shaking as she stumbled back to the cabin. The key was gone, lost somewhere in the hollow. Her mind reeled with what she'd seen, Mara, the faces, her own life laid bare. Inside the cabin, she collapsed by the fire, the journal falling open. A new entry stared back in Mara's handwriting, dated today. "You found it, Clara. The hollow doesn't give answers, only truths. Keep listening." She slammed the book shut, her breath ragged. Had she written it? Had the hollow? Elias's words echoed. It changed her. Clara didn't feel changed, not exactly. She felt awake. The hollow had shown her pain, but also love, moments she'd buried. She thought of Mara, alone in this cabin, chasing truths until they consumed her. Clara wouldn't let that happen. She stayed for weeks, the cabin becoming home. She fixed the porch, chopped wood, read Mara's journal cover to cover. The hollow didn't call her back, but its weight lingered, a reminder to live deliberately. Elias visited sometimes, bringing bread or stories, never mentioning the hollow again. Clara didn't either. Some truths didn't need words. The rain returned one evening, heavier than before, drumming on the cabin's roof like a summons. Clara sat by the fire, the journal open on her lap. She'd found a new entry that morning, not in Mara's handwriting but her own, though she didn't remember writing it. "The hollow isn't done with you." Her stomach twisted as she read it again, the words stark against the yellowed page. She snapped the book shut and tossed it onto the table, its thud swallowed by the storm. A creak came from the porch, not the usual settling of wood but a deliberate step. She grabbed the poker, her pulse quickening. Elias never came this late, and the rain would have kept anyone else away. She crossed to the door, peering through the window. No one. Just rain and shadow. But the creak came again, followed by a low scrape like something dragging across the boards. Clara opened the door, the poker raised. The porch was empty, but a trail of mud led to the edge, disappearing into the grass. She stepped out, the rain soaking her instantly. Her flashlight beam cut through the dark, catching something glinting in the mud, a small brass object. She knelt, heart pounding. It was the key, the one she'd lost in the hollow. It lay there as if placed, its surface untouched by the rain's grime. She snatched it up, the metal warm despite the chill. The forest was silent, the rain's rhythm the only sound. She backed into the cabin, locking the door, and held the key to the lantern's light. It was unchanged, its edges smooth, but it felt heavier, like it carried the hollow's weight. She slipped it into her pocket, her mind racing. Had she dropped it outside? Or had someone, brought it back? Sleep eluded her that night. She sat by the fire, the journal unopened but looming on the table. The hollow's images haunted her. Mara's face, the pleading eyes, her own regrets. She thought the hollow was done with her, but the key's return said otherwise. At dawn she made a decision. She'd go back. Not to the hollow, not yet, but to Elias. He knew more than he'd let on. The trail to his cabin was slick, the air thick with mist. She knocked, but no answer came. The door was ajar, creaking as she pushed it open. "Elias," she called. The cabin was dark, the fire cold. Papers littered the floor, maps and sketches of the mountain, marked with circles and cryptic notes. One word stood out, scrawled in red, "Hollow." A chill ran through her. She stepped inside, scanning the room. The rifle was gone from above the hearth. A single photo lay on the table, old and faded, Mara and Elias, younger, standing by the creek, smiling. Clara's breath caught. He hadn't just known Mara. They'd been close. Why hadn't he said so? She found a note beneath the photo in Elias's rough scrawl, "Gone to the hollow. Don't follow." Her grip tightened on the key. He'd warned her to stay away, but he'd gone himself. She stuffed the note and photo into her coat and ran back to the trail, the creek's path now familiar. The oak loomed ahead, its branches stark against the gray sky. The rock face was there, the seam barely visible. She pressed the key into the indentation, and the stone groaned open. The passage was darker this time, the air thicker, almost syrupy. Her flashlight flickered, casting jagged shadows. The cavern opened before her, the pool glowing faintly, its surface rippling though no breeze touched it. Elias stood at its edge, his back to her, the rifle slung over his shoulder. "You shouldn't be here," he said without turning. "Why are you?" Clara's voice echoed, sharper than she intended. He faced her, his eyes hollowed by something she couldn't name. "Mara didn't die of a heart attack," he said. "The hollow took her. It takes what it wants." Clara's throat tightened. "What does it want?" "Truth," he said, his voice low. "Yours. Mine. Hers. It shows you everything, but it keeps a peace." He stepped closer to the pool, his boots inches from the water. "I tried to stop her. Now it's calling me." Clara grabbed his arm. "Don't." But he shook her off, his gaze fixed on the pool. The water churned, faces rising, Mara, others, and now Elias, his reflection twisting into something older, broken. He stepped forward, and the water swallowed him, the surface stilling instantly. Clara screamed his name, her voice lost in the cavern's hum. She knelt by the pool, her reflection staring back, but it wasn't alone. Mara's face lingered beside hers, then Elias's, their eyes urging her to follow. The key burned in her pocket, the journal heavy in her coat. She stood, backing away, the cavern's hum now a roar. She ran, the passage blurring past, and burst into the rain-soaked forest. The cabin welcomed her back, its warmth a stark contrast to the hollow's pull. She locked the door, her hands shaking, and threw the key into the fire. It glowed red, then black, but didn't melt. She buried it in the ash, vowing never to touch it again. The journal lay open, a new entry in her handwriting. "It's not done with you." She tore the page out and fed it to the flames, watching it curl and vanish. Days passed, the rain unrelenting. Clara stayed inside, the cabin her fortress. She burned the journal, page by page, but the words lingered in her mind. The hollow was still out there waiting. She heard it in the rain, in the creak of the porch, in the silence of the forest. Elias was gone, Mara was gone, but she wasn't. Not yet. She began to write her own journal, not Mara's truths but her own. She wrote of the city she'd fled, the life she'd rebuilt. The cabin was no longer just a refuge, it was a choice. Each day she chopped wood, fixed leaks, made it hers. The hollow's pull faded, but never fully. It was part of the mountain, part of her now. One night, a knock came, soft but deliberate. She froze, the poker in hand. The rain had stopped, the silence heavy. She opened the door to an empty porch, but a new key lay there, identical to the one she'd burned. She stared at it, her heart pounding, and slammed the door shut. Clara backed away, the poker trembling in her grip. The key's presence felt like a challenge, a taunt from the hollow. She didn't touch it, didn't dare. Instead, she shoved a chair against the door, its legs scraping the floor, and retreated to the fire. The cabin, once a sanctuary, now felt like a cage, its walls too close, its shadows too deep. She sat, staring at the hearth where the first key still lay buried in ash, its outline faintly visible. The new key outside was a message. The hollow wasn't done. She didn't sleep. The silence pressed against her, broken only by the occasional drip from the eaves. By morning the key was still there, glinting in the pale light. She stepped over it, refusing to acknowledge its pull, and headed to the creek. The rock face loomed, its seam as unyielding as ever. She pressed her hand against it, half expecting it to open without the key. It didn't. The stone was cold now, no pulse, no warmth. But she felt watched, the forest's eyes hidden in the mist. Clara returned to the cabin, her boots caked in mud. She needed answers not from the hollow but from something tangible. She rummaged through the loft, tearing through boxes she'd ignored before. Old letters, photos, a map of the mountain yellowed with age. One letter, in Mara's handwriting, was addressed to Elias. "You saw it too, didn't you? The hollow doesn't just show truth, it takes. I'm going back tonight. Don't follow." Clara's breath hitched. Mara had known the danger, yet she'd gone. And now Elias had followed. The map showed the creek, the oak, and a faint X near the rock face. But there was another mark, deeper in the forest, labeled Second Hollow. Clara's pulse quickened. Another entrance? She folded the map, grabbed her coat, and hesitated at the porch. The key still lay there, untouched. She kicked it into the grass, her jaw set, and started into the forest. The trail was faint, overgrown with brambles that snagged her jeans. The air grew colder, the trees denser, their branches knitting a canopy that blocked the sky. After an hour she found it, a second rock face, smaller, hidden behind a curtain of vines. No seam, no keyhole, just a smooth surface that hummed faintly when she touched it. She pressed harder and the stone shifted, revealing a narrow gap. No key needed. The passage was tighter than the first, the air thick with the scent of moss and iron. Her flashlight flickered, then died, leaving her in darkness. She pressed on, her hands grazing the walls, guided by the hum that grew louder with each step. The passage opened into a smaller cavern, its walls pulsing with the same bioluminescent fungi. No pool here, but a stone altar stood at the center, carved with symbols she didn't recognize. On it lay a single object, a worn leather pouch. Clara approached, her breath shallow. The pouch was heavy, tied with a cord that crumbled at her touch. Inside was a locket, silver and tarnished, engraved with the initials M.E. Mara's. She opened it, revealing a tiny photo of Mara and a young girl, Clara maybe 6, laughing by a river. Her chest tightened. She hadn't remembered that day, but the hollow did. A whisper filled the cavern, not words but a feeling, regret, love, warning. Clara clutched the locket, her eyes stinging. "Mara?" she whispered. The air shifted, and a shadow moved across the wall, not hers. She spun, but no one was there. The hum grew louder, vibrating in her bones. She backed toward the passage, the locket in her hand, when the altar trembled. Dust fell, and a crack split the stone, revealing a glint of brass beneath. Another key, identical to the others. Clara's stomach churned. She didn't touch it, didn't want its weight. The cavern shook again, the hum now a roar. She ran, the passage narrowing as if trying to trap her. She burst into the forest, gasping, the locket still in her hand. The rock sealed behind her, silent. Back at the cabin, she placed the locket on the table, its photo staring up at her. The key on the porch was gone, but she didn't trust the absence. She boarded the windows, nailed the door shut, and sat by the fire, the locket around her neck. The hollows, both of them, were alive, connected, watching. Mara had chased their truths and they'd taken her. Elias too. Clara wouldn't follow, but the mountain wasn't letting go. The next day she found a new note in the journal, not in her handwriting. "You can't run from what you are." She tore it out, burned it, but the words stayed. She began carving symbols into the cabin's walls, ones she'd seen on the altar, hoping they'd protect her. The rain returned, softer now, and with it, a new sound, a faint knock, not at the door but from the walls themselves. Clara froze, the knife slipping from her hand and clattering to the floor. The knock came again, rhythmic, from behind the fireplace. She pressed her ear to the stone, its surface cold against her cheek. The sound wasn't random, it pulsed like a heartbeat, steady and deliberate. She stepped back, her breath shallow, and scanned the room. The locket hung heavy around her neck, its weight a constant reminder of the second hollow. The cabin, once her refuge, now felt alive, its walls whispering secrets she wasn't ready to hear. She grabbed the map from the loft, its edges fraying. The X marking the second hollow was clear, but faint lines branched from it, leading to other points on the mountain. One was circled, labeled source. Clara's fingers traced the path, her mind racing. The hollows weren't separate, they were connected, part of something bigger. Mara had known, and Elias too. They'd both gone deeper, and neither came back whole. She didn't want to go, but the knocks grew louder, echoing in her skull. She packed a flashlight, the map, and a crowbar from the shed, leaving the locket on the table. The rain had stopped, leaving the forest draped in mist. The trail to the circled point was steep, winding through pines so dense they blocked the sky. Her boots sank into the mud, each step heavier than the last. After an hour, she reached a clearing where a massive boulder sat, its surface smooth except for a single carved symbol, a circle with a line through it like the ones on the altar. Clara circled the boulder, her flashlight catching faint grooves in the stone. No seam, no keyhole, but the air hummed just like in the hollows. She pressed the crowbar against the symbol, and the boulder shifted, revealing a spiral staircase carved into the earth. The air below smelled of wet stone and something sharp, like ozone. She hesitated, the knocks from the cabin still ringing in her ears. She couldn't stay, couldn't ignore it. She descended. The stairs twisted deeper than she expected, the walls narrowing until her shoulders brushed them. Her flashlight flickered, but the hum guided her, growing stronger. The staircase ended in a chamber, smaller than the hollows but alive with the same bioluminescent glow. At its center stood a stone pillar, etched with the same symbols. On it rested a single object, a glass vial filled with a liquid that shimmered like mercury. The hum was deafening now, vibrating in her chest. Clara approached, her hand hovering over the vial. The air pulsed with emotions, fear, hope, loss, not hers but the mountain's. She saw flashes, Mara standing here, her face tear-streaked, Elias, his hands shaking as he reached for the vial. Others, strangers, their eyes wide with awe or terror. The vial was the source, the heart of the hollows. She didn't know how she knew, but the truth settled in her bones. "Don't," a voice said low and rough. Clara spun, crowbar raised. Elias stood at the chamber's edge, his raincoat dripping, his face gaunt. "It's not yours to take. You're alive?" Clara's voice cracked. "The hollow took me, but not all the way." He stepped closer, his eyes fixed on the vial. "It shows you truth, but this makes it real. Mara tried to take it. It broke her." Clara's hand froze. "What is it?" "Memory," he said. "The mountain's memory. Every choice, every life that touched this place. You drink it, you carry it. All of it." She stared at the vial, its light dancing in her eyes. The knocks, the keys, the hollows, they all led here. She saw Mara's smile, her own childhood, her regrets, all tangled in the liquid's glow. "Why me?" she whispered. "You came," Elias said. "The mountain chose you." Clara's fingers brushed the vial, its surface warm. The hum surged and the chamber shook, dust raining from the ceiling. She saw her life, every mistake, every joy reflected in the liquid. She could take it, know everything, carry the mountain's weight. Or she could walk away, live with the fragments she'd already seen. She stepped back, the crowbar heavy in her hand. "I'm not Mara," she said, her voice steady. Elias's eyes widened, but he didn't move. She swung the crowbar, smashing the vial. The liquid spilled, hissing as it hit the stone, and the hum stopped, the silence deafening. The chamber dimmed, the glow fading. Elias lunged, but the pillar cracked and the ground trembled. "Run!" he shouted. Clara scrambled up the stairs, the walls shaking around her. She burst into the clearing as the boulder sealed shut, the ground still. Elias didn't follow. Back at the cabin, the knocks were gone. The locket still lay on the table, its photo unchanged. Clara sank to the floor, her body trembling. She'd broken the source, but the mountain's weight lingered. She didn't know if she'd freed herself or doomed herself, but for the first time the cabin felt still. She clutched the locket, its edges digging into her palm, and whispered, "I'm done."